Reporting live from Little Forest, New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen, we give you the most recent updates on the nation. And today we are reporting from Urban News Daily that the world war that has been raging on for 6 years now has been changed by the major event that just took place this morning. It is August 6, 1945, and just 4 hours ago, an American B-29 bomber dropped the first atom bomb ever on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. This bomber was named Enola Gay, and the device it dropped was said to be 2,000 times more powerful and destructive than the biggest bomb ever created by America. Unfortunately, there's a lingering cloud of debris over the city of Hiroshima, so the extent of damage that has been done cannot be confirmed. President Harry S. Truman reported from the USS Augusta in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that the dropping of the bomb could have been avoided if the Japanese agreed to unconditionally surrender to the Allies. However, they didn't succumb to the ultimatum given by President Truman, so the U.S. was forced to take more extreme measures in order to avoid sacrificing more precious American lives. The bomb was meant to destroy the Japanese port and army base. However, even though the number of casualties has not been released and confirmed yet, footage of the bombing suggests that thousands of Japanese civilians have been killed. Many Americans are furious about the dropping of the bomb, but President Truman has been repeatedly reporting that this bombing was necessary in order to start putting an end to this horrific world war. Once we receive more information about the major effects of the bombing, we will fill you in with more news. But for now, here's Katie Cathcart with some news on the recent massive internment of the Japanese immigrants and their children on the West Coast.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Now to turn to other news affecting the nation at this very moment. In lieu of the monumental American bombing at Pearl Harbor, Japanese American fates still hang in the overcast shadow of victory for the United States. It has been just over 3.5 years since the proclamation by Franklin Delano Roosevelt has broken through the sound waves of American life. Presidential Proclamation number 2537 sent hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans and people of Japanese ancestry into internment camps throughout the nation. As estimates now show, over 120,000 Japanese Americans and their families have been concentrated into relocation camps. All of this action was the direct result of the mass horror and fear that pumped through the veins of this nation after the bombing at Pearl Harbor. Because of this bombing, countless numbers of American people focused their anger and resentment towards Japanese Americans. Americans, the majority of them being of European descent, started to question the loyalty of Japanese Americans, arguing whether Japanese Americans would support Japan or American fighting in the war. FDR then reinstated another act, Executive Order number 3099, calling for the rapid rounding up and shipment of Japanese Americans to internment camps. At this current state in the internment process, in the year 1945, all internment camps have been closed following FDR's resignation of the executive order. However, as we all watched and listened apprehensively to the trial of Korematsu versus the United States, the Supreme Court ruled that in war times, any government action that protected the safety of its citizens could be passed. However, as recent totals now tell us, more than 66% of those sent to relocation camps were American-born citizens and had never seen, been to, or had any ties to Japan and its government. Though the internment of Japanese Americans has been a controversial proclamation since its passage, we as a nation are glad to see the war come to an end and welcome the return of our fellow Japanese American friends. Now, on to Dan Freed with an intriguing and mystifying story about Glenn Miller.
Thanks guys for those astonishing reports. Now to discuss the pressing matter regarding the disappearance of performer Glenn Miller. As you all must know, Glenn Miller, the rising star, recently disappeared. He found himself in uniform so that he could entertain the troops. Shockingly, however, his plane disappeared going to France. Its last known location was over the English Channel. This will be sad news, especially to the US soldiers, as they looked forward to seeing him play. His music reminds them of what they are fighting for back at home. It acts as a morale boost. There is quite a bit of speculation surrounding this matter. Some conspiracies think Miller's sudden disappearance is Nazi-related. Scientists, however, have more likely reasonings. Miller could have been flying too close to the ocean, which accounts for extremely low temperatures. Factoring in the size of the plane, the fuel intake may have froze, blocking any gas from getting to the engine. With only a few seconds to react, the pilot has little chance to save the plane at that point. Of course, this is a viable solution to the mystery, but a hypothesis at best. If any viewers have more information about this disappearance, please contact the station. And this concludes the segment.
With all of this vicious news about the war, we wanted to talk about a couple of the more happier things that have been developing throughout the war. As you all may know already, industrialization has skyrocketed since the war began, with a prominent focus on creating weapons and war devices. However, with a majority of the men in America gone at war, more and more women have been offered jobs in the defense industry. With more and more women being offered jobs, there has been a growing feminist movement, with Rosie the Riveter being featured as the center figure of the movement. Rosie the Riveter made her first big debut 3 years ago in 1942, when a lady with the name of Naomi Parker Fraley was photographed while she was working wearing the famous polka-dotted bandana that Rosie is associated with. A couple of months later, Fraley's prototype was created by an artist with the name of J. Howard Miller, and is still extremely well known to this day, even with World War II coming close to its end. Rosie has been a role model for American women all around the United States, and here at Urban Times Daily, we predict that her legacy will live on for a long, long time. We just love talking about the strong American women who have been taking over the country while the men are gone at war. So let's shift over to the All-American Girls Baseball League. As the men are striking victory after victory in the war, many of these strong American women are striking home run after home run in the diamond at home. Baseball is, and has been, one of the most followed national sports in the United States for a couple of decades now. And these American women are definitely making sure that it stays that way while their husbands are gone at war. When it was first announced that our men had to leave for war after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, we here at Urban Times Daily, and I'm sure all of you at home were devastated to hear that America's most popular pastime would be forgotten about once the war was over. But thanks to Philip Wrigley, who actually held ownership of the Chicago Cubs, baseball surely lived on and still lives on in the hands of the best American women baseball players around the nation. Millions and millions of fans sit around every day and enticingly watch these typical suburban women scruff up their skirts and play ball just as well as the men did. Some of the most well-known teams to the state are the South Bend Blue Sox, the Kenosha Comets, and the Springfield Sallies. But here at Urban Times Daily, we just cannot get enough of the two biggest rival teams, the Rockford Peaches from Illinois and the Racine Bells from Wisconsin. We're just so thankful that our lovely American women have stepped up to the plate and saved baseball from striking out. No pun intended. But again, with the war slowly inching to a close, we wonder what the deal will be when the men return home from war. Now let's be honest. With all this entertainment that we got to experience at home, our men are risking their lives every day at war, and do deserve some entertainment while fighting. But don't you worry, they sure do. So now we're going to move on to Dan Freed with some news about the danger that these voluntary entertainers put themselves through in order to delight our courageous fighting men.
It is now time for the special segment interview of our broadcast, featuring Edna, the model American citizen helping ensure victory in this war. Thank you for coming today, Edna. First off, what is it that you contribute to the war over here in the States?
Glad you could have me, Dan. Every citizen should make use of their time, rather than sit home. I got involved by signing up for a job to build military surplus. In my building, we manufacture B-17 bomber planes. Not only do I earn a salary, but help a cause as well. That is my main contribution, Dan.
That is wonderful. You heard it here first, folks. It would be quite productive to get employed at your local factory. New positions open up all the time because of the demand. What other advice could you give the American citizen looking to help out?
2 words, victory guard. I would just like to tell the American people that there is plenty of things they could do to help the war effort, right in the comfort of their own neighborhoods. Instead of going to the grocery store so often, grow a garden for self-supplied greens. This is easy. Might I add, a fun hobby to take up? And while on the subject, ration your food. Our boys need as much nutrition as they could get to combat the enemy.
Interesting indeed. Yes, people, although rationing is bothersome now, it significantly helps the war. Food is the main resource needed for these soldiers. Lastly, Edna, before we wrap up the segment, what are these recycling stations that we've been seeing around town lately?
Thank you for reminding me, Dan. Recycling stations are very important as well. Each station will have a different material to recycle. Some will be metals like aluminum to build aircrafts. Others can be rubber to put towards tires and such. The things that would help you otherwise throw out, take to recycle.
Well, once again, thank you for joining us, Edna. We appreciate the advice and hopefully the viewers will take some.
With war being a presence not only throughout the United States, but in the world around us, people of different ages, ethnicities, incomes, and social standings have all formed their opinions on the violence and destruction occurring in their lives. This is your weekly editorial covering the Manhattan Project and the bombing of Hiroshima. Where some see the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima as a major advancement for the United States as a global superpower, others have vastly different opinions. The creation of the world's first successful atomic bomb is definitely a critical step for the United States' intervention in the Second Great World War. However, the bombing at Hiroshima comes with the cost of more than 90 to 145,000 Japanese civilians dying or being injured by the bomb. Alongside the death caused by the bomb's projectile itself, subsequent amounts of Japanese civilians are dying at this very moment from burns and radiation poisoning. With all of these factors taken into account, was the use of a large-scale weapon of destruction actually necessary? Yes, it is crucial to point out the sizable garrison standing at Hiroshima and the government's precise, thought-out location for the atomic bomb. But it is also necessary to point out the death done to the other thousands of civilians living in Hiroshima. It seems as though in war, with every step forward a country takes, it neglects to see the effects of the fighting and annihilation. The sole idea behind the Manhattan Project, proposed to President Roosevelt by the great thinker Albert Einstein, was a glorious feat of engineering, intelligence, and craftsmanship. The damage to civilians caused by the bomb, however, was not as glorious as an endeavor. With the United States already in possession of hundreds of thousands of the world's greatest soldiers, Marines, Air Force, and Navy combatants, the war could have been fought without weapons of mass destruction. Yet, this editorial has no aim at taking away the credit of the people involved in the Manhattan Project. With the bombing now completed, the nation should also be glad the war seems to be coming to an end. With that, this editorial has been published as food for thought and a way to celebrate the American intelligence advancements, as well as shed light on the destruction in other countries. That's all for tonight's news, folks. We will see you next week back here at Urban News Daily for the nation's newest stories.